Okay, here we go. Nice to see iPad.
I need to change that. I just haven't done it yet.
And Tim is here, sort of.
I'm here. Hi,
Hi,
Laura.
Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
Good. I'm okay. There you are.
There I am.
Where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Midtown Kingston.
Ah,
Looks like very cool industrial look.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
that.
it's the shirt factory, old
Ah.
loft apartments.
Oh, that's cool.
very nice.
How are you, Mary Jane?
Good. And yourself?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
You also. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
I can't believe how fast this month is going by.
I know.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know Karen and Wayne are supposedly coming. Let me text Wayne and see where he is. Karen came over to me today, just to meet Sadie.
Oh, you're gonna show her off here?
I could, she's being very good, as you can hear, because it's silent.
Yeah.
I have a new puppy.
Oh, what kind?
She's a mix, but she's definitely a hound. And I'm thinking she may have some pointer in her, because when I take her out and she sits, she'll like put the one paw up, like,
Yeah.
but I don't know. The rescue also said she may have some Great Dane in her. She's got rather big paws. But
When you sent that picture of her on the, I think you have something on the stairs so that she doesn't run down. And you took this picture, her paws looked enormous.
yeah, that was a little skewed, but I'll take you in quickly. Hearing a cat doing something. Oh, she's being
Are you?
berated.
Huh. You looking for her?
Oh no, she's in her crate. Can you see?
Oh, yeah.
Very cute.
Hello, Sadie.
Say hi. Say hello to everybody. Oh, it's a good part of the day when she's in there, I have to say. She is a puppy.
No.
Rambunctious and. All right, so who else? Who is 845-5 or 331-6115? Uh-oh, we woke her up.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, who is that?
Phil Canyon.
Oh, Phil, welcome. Glad you could join
Hey,
us.
Phil.
Hi. You won't be able to see me, but that's your loss.
Oh,
It is,
sure.
but I know you have trouble with Zoom, so I'm just glad that you're here.
Well, it's not a matter of having trouble with it. It's that I simply don't have the microphone or little camera, whatever it is, that goes with the PC. I have a very old PC,
Uh-huh.
so I can't do Zoom.
Okay, well, welcome. We're glad you could join us. Karen and Wayne are coming in. I thought there were a few other people on Facebook that were coming. There they are. Hi, Karen and Wayne.
Oh, hello.
Hello
Or
there,
Wayne and
everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Regis.
Hey, how are you?
Okay.
Good, good.
Recording with-
I'm sorry, and Susan, I didn't say hello to you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm
Nice
sort of
to
an
see you.
interloper from Rosendale, but wanted to be on track with what you're doing.
Well, that's okay. This is not necessarily just a town of Ulster issue, nor is it just a town of Ulster project, because whatever happens at Tech City now, iPark 87 will impact the whole county. So we really do welcome anybody from around the county to take part in this.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I don't know how many more we're gonna have. I'm sorry, and Beth Davenport was supposed to be here. I don't know. Maybe she will
I'll try to
join.
reach out to her, Laura, and I'll see if she's still able to join.
Okay. Thank you. So, there's Ron.
Hi, Ron.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
I think she's.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to finish
How
my
butter.
dinner.
Okay. Let me just look and see if I have a message. Nope. Okay. I'm just going to wait for Tim to come back. Tim, did you
I'm
reach her?
back. I texted her, so I'll let you know if I hear anything back.
Okay. Well, I know she knows Mary Jane, so we don't have to wait for her. Regis, do you want to introduce Mary Jane? And you all know Tim Wiedemann, the Director for Economic Development of Ulster County. We've introduced everybody that's here as a resident. And thank you all for being here. This is a really interesting topic. And Regis and I have spent some time in the past week meeting with a number of people in the county. Chris Marks from SUNY Ulster. And we learned a bit about what SUNY Ulster is up to as far as education and the programs that they're doing that help develop workforce. I spoke with Beth Davenport, who we hope will join us, who is from Stockade Works, which has a studio up in Saugerties called Upriver Studios. Pretty Little Liars is being filmed there at this current time, and they have a contract for several years. And as long as the show doesn't get canceled, they're going to be there. We've just had a really interesting conversation about ideas, and we met with also Sharon Williams, who is new to the county. Tim, what is her title now? I should have written it down.
He's our new director of the Office of Employment and Training, so our workforce development office in the county.
And she is just amazing and thinking a lot out of the box, and we just talked over some really great ideas. So it's a really interesting topic, and the reason why we thought we should have this meeting tonight is that, of course, people heard Joe Cotter from National Resources say that there would be a fair number of $15 an hour wage jobs with some companies that he would be bringing into iPark 87. And everybody's a bit tweaked about that, because we all know you cannot live in Ulster County and get paid $15 an hour. So the question becomes then, how do we develop a workforce? What, how do we develop that first? Because Town of Ulster Citizens has always said that we think it's very important that whatever happens over at iPark 87 benefits the people in Ulster County first. So how do we go about developing this workforce? We know people move away as they graduate high school because they can't find jobs, or jobs that they can earn a living on and pay rent or pay for a house in this area. So how do we do it? And Regis and I had met with Mary Jane, I think going on 2 years ago. I remember it was a very cold day. And Regis and I drove down to Newburgh, and you gave us some great information. And as we thought about the next steps with what's going to happen at iPark 87, we thought it would be wise for us to educate ourselves on how do you develop a workforce? How, you know, and what part can we play in this as residents? And so we decided to ask Mary Jane to come in, and we thank her for being here. And this way, when we talk, hopefully we're going to have Joe Cotter in from National Resources soon to talk to all of us about what his plans are for Tech City. We then are a bit more educated on what we're talking about with, we need better paying jobs provided over at iPark 87. There's much more to it than just demanding that. So I will now turn it over to Regis, who will introduce Mary Jane.
Okay, thank you, Laura. You know, we had, as Laura was saying, we met, I guess, almost a couple of years ago. I can't quite recall. And Mary Jane said, "Sure, I'd be very interested in Tech City," because this was at a time is way before the National Resources Inc. Interest, and IBM is still, well, still is, but was a major player, which we thought was in the way, and also Allen Ginsberg, so there's been a lot of changes since then, and so I think we're ready to hear some and to really have a good and thoughtful conversation about what we think of the workforce. And of course, in the recent months, the last couple of years, the workforce has really been the issue, and we know that there is going to be no economic development without a workforce development. And so we have a demographic problem. We have fewer people around to do all this work. We had the Great Resignation and the Great Reconsideration of what are we going to do with how are we going to go back to work if we go back to work. And so we're hoping that employers get this message. But we certainly have a strong dedication to the local workforce, and the Workforce Development Institute, based in Albany, statewide, not-for-profit organization. Mary Jane is a regional director in the Hudson Valley in the 7 counties in the Mid-Hudson, which of course includes Ulster, and she's very involved in workforce development issues in Dutchess and Orange, principally. She'll probably talk a little bit about that. So, Mary Jane, we'd like you to just pick up, because when she said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And I got started, Mary Jane says, "That's nice. That's called kitchen sink." And so I think that we threw too much at her, but we asked her to sort things out any way she wanted. So Mary Jane, you can start in medias res, in the middle of things, and we'll take it from there, and we'll have a conversation about the workforce. So please, Mary Jane Bertram.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here this evening. I'm very interested in this conversation and the sharing of ideas and knowledge that we can have, because I've been working in workforce development in New York State since 2005. And what I have learned is that I have a lot to learn. There is not a one-size-fits-all, a magic wand that we can wave that's going to solve all of our problems. But what goes a long way is meeting together and having conversations like we will be having this evening. I think that can help us all navigate some of the issues with workforce development. As Regis was saying, the Workforce Development Institute is a statewide nonprofit. I'm the Hudson Valley Regional Director. Our mission is to retain, promote, and expand good jobs in New York State. And we do that a variety of ways. We do that through things like this, joining in on conversations about regional issues. We do it with our boots on the ground information, data analysis, convening different groups together. And of course, our grants. We do have a grant program where we assist businesses, manufacturers, nonprofits, educational providers in retraining, training, and retaining a workforce. So just to let you know a little bit about in the Hudson Valley through COVID, even though we were all very challenged, the Workforce Development Institute, we still were able to do almost 30 projects in with grants in the Hudson Valley and leveraging about $1.5 million of investment and increasing skill development for about 1,800 workers. So but that's a drop in the bucket for everything that could be done and needs to be done. When you talk about workforce development, in my mind, economic development and workforce development go hand in hand. They're two wings of the same bird. And so often I see economic development working without a thought to workforce development. Is groups, they do business attraction to bring in the businesses and without bringing in workforce development early in the process. So you're left with businesses coming in without a workforce trained and prepared to do, or you've spent, and this is a pet peeve of mine, you've spent giving away tax incentives and different things for companies that come in without good paying jobs. So it's important that if we're going to invest, and we invest in our cities, our towns, our region, that we're investing in family sustaining wage jobs. And as Laura was talking about before, $15 an hour. And now $15 an hour is a great start. And I think there is a place for it in workforce development. Entry-level jobs that have a career ladder where you can work your way up. You have to have a starting point and somebody can learn and move up that ladder. Because when I pulled living wage data for Ulster County, and this is old data, this was before our rents and mortgage, price of homes shot way up. It was saying if you are a single parent with one child, to living wage is just over $33 an hour. Now, and that honestly, and then the figures they gave for housing are old. The figures they gave for childcare are old. So where does that leave us? Because there aren't too many for unskilled. Well, I hate using that word unskilled because everybody goes in the workforce and successful, there is some skill involved. If the individuals at McDonald's that show up on time, polite at the register, can make change, those are skills. So pardon me for using that phrase unskilled. I should say new into the workforce. There's no way they can support themselves and pay rent on the type of wages we're seeing. So that leaves us with looking at situations where we know we have to train the workforce, and we also know we need to provide career pathways. So in the past, I've seen different initiatives happen, great training plans. Do you guys remember several years ago, I think it was around 2010, where NYSERDA had the blower door training going on for energy efficiency?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they trained a lot of people. It was great training and great opportunity. The only problem was it wasn't linked to jobs. So if you're going to provide a training, then you have to bring in the business community, the jobs of what's needed. What are the exact skill sets that employer needs, so that if somebody has this training, they can link directly into a job. My colleague, she, a few years ago on Long Island, she was doing something that I thought was tremendous. And I went down and I spent a day with her to see what she was doing. She brought together a group of providers. We had community college, BOCES, educational training providers. And they were touring the pharmaceutical industry. They were taking a sector approach to workforce development. And Long Island has a lot of pharmaceuticals. So they took a day in this group through and toured all of the facilities to find out what the skill sets were missing. They gathered that data, then they sat around a table. One of the big issues was having trained employees that could repair the equipment. It's very specific. So how do you start from scratch in that? Or is there another group that you can upskill quickly to meet the demand? And it turned out through talking with the BOCES instructor that auto mechanics, because so much on automobiles are computerized now, was an easy lift to bring them quickly up to the level to repair the equipment in manufacturing, in the pharmaceutical manufacturing plants. So I thought that was a very interesting model, but so it was using a group to first gather the information on what is necessary from that group of employers, and then talking to training providers who's already doing it. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Now let's plug in the workforce. We have a problem now, as you all know, is the workforce. It's everybody saying there's a lack of people. Before the pandemic, we had very low unemployment also. And at that time, I found employers were beginning to get creative. They were willing to look at people that had been formerly incarcerated, or people that had other roadblocks to being successful at work. I think we're in the same place today, that we have to expand what we're looking at as far as hiring and training and investing in a workforce. If you remember back in the early 2000s, when there was a glut of workers on the market. So employers, often they were listing the requirements for a job as saying you needed a master's degree, when it was actually an entry-level job and you didn't need it. But they had so many applicants for every single job, they were able to raise up those requirements. It's a little different now. That doesn't work, and a lot of employers haven't revisited those job descriptions and advertising for the job. So that's one issue. They have to revisit, what do they really need? I hear from many manufacturers that if somebody will show up on time, they can train them on the job, which is great. With the apprentice programs we have in manufacturing are a wonderful model. We've supported pre-apprentice programs in the construction trades. We've got a pre-apprentice program in the Hudson Valley, which it was created to increase diversity in the building trades. They graduated their first class in the summer, and every single one of them had direct entry into a building trade apprentice. That earn while you learn model is fantastic, especially when you're trying to bring opportunities to people that have to have that income right now. How many of us can afford to work for free? And if you're going to school to get your education, unless you're living with mommy and daddy, you have to have an income to support that learning time. So that model of apprenticeship training, I think, can be expanded and should be expanded. It is the gold standard for training. The other thing is I hear from employers, and this concerns me, is some employers in the region have accept a 40% turnover rate as a cost of doing business. Now, whenever there's a huge cost involved in onboarding and training somebody up, and to just accept that you're going to lose 40% of them, there's other problems going on with that employer. We know that wage is an issue. But from what I hear, it's not only about wage. There is a company, and it's in the Kingston area, that the wages aren't great. But what they have done is they've figured out a way to be flexible with their schedules. And they hire a lot of women. And as we know, most women are the primary responsibility of the children. So they can flex their time at work. If they have a school function or a sick child or a doctor's appointment, they can easily change those hours to be able to accommodate what they're doing, what their needs are outside of work. So that's one way an employer can overcome when they honestly can't afford to pay more. They can overcome that by increasing some of the other benefits to have a better work-life balance. Because if you invest in your workforce, it's going to return back to you. One of the questions that Regis sent to me was, how do you do more with fewer workers? How can they take on more responsibility? What does that look like? That's interesting that you brought that up, Regis, because for a few years ago, I entered into conversations just about that, is the need to have fewer employees do more. So you train them up, you upskill them, then you've got to pay them more if they're doing more. And most employees are very open to that, especially when some of those skills are what we call walkable certificates. They follow them through whatever their career is. It makes sense. It makes sense for the worker. It makes sense for the employer. If you have good employees you can count on, why not invest in them? There have been companies that we've worked with. As I mentioned, we give out grants out to help companies expand and retain their workforce. One of them, they had workers that they wanted to promote, but they didn't have really the credentials to justify the promotion. So they applied for a grant for those workers to take college classes online. And we were happy to help with that. We did so. And then the workers were able to be promoted. And it was a win-win for both the employer and the employee. I like win-win situations. Some of the other things we've done, I give you a little flavor of what WDI does, because we're funded through the state, but we're not a part of state government. So that's good and bad. The good part is we can be creative and flexible with our dollars. The bad part is our pots of money are not huge. So most of our grants are smaller. But we've done some interesting things. You're interested in iPark, it's 87, right, in Kingston, and 84 down in Fishkill. This is one thing we were able to do. My counterpart in New York City got a call from a company that was being courted from out of state. They had the need to expand. They were in the city and there was no room. So, and they didn't really want to move out of state. They like New York, their family's here in New York. She contacted me. So I contacted the people in Dutchess County regarding iPark. Let's meet with this business. Let's see what their needs are and if it fits. And a group of us met with the company. We toured iPark. It was a perfect fit. You may have heard of Crepini. They've expanded 2 or 3 times in that facility, and they're doing great. And they're here because of communication, inter-region communication. I think that that's important when we're looking at workforce development, because it's nice if you can live and work right in your own town, but we know so much in the Hudson Valley is people are driving back and forth across the river, north and south, to get from home to work. So Crepini was a good win for us. And iPark is growing and expanding, iPark 84 in Fishkill. They've done a lot of business attraction. What I don't see there is workforce development built into the facility. So I think that you all have an opportunity to talk about that and build workforce development into the facility. That's just a tiny little task, right? Is how does that happen? What does it look like? You can be as creative as possible. It's I personally like it's if you have a training facility on campus. We know that tech jobs are big. So you need a computer lab. You need different spaces for different types of careers and jobs. Kitchen space to teach food safety and all those different things, because we do have a lot of food manufacturing in the region. Some of the manufacturing, the CNC, also linking into some of the BOCES. The Ulster County BOCES has got an amazing facility on 9W, and they're doing some great training there. There's some high schools that have really expanded. Pine Hills out in Orange County has really expanded into some training, some manufacturing training in high school. on the big equipment, the CNC machines, and 3D printers and all the rest of it. And I feel like I am just chatting and going on and on. So I think it's probably a good time if there's questions or if something I've skipped and I haven't answered, because I can talk forever. When I was born, my name is Mary Jane, but my mother wanted to call me Wendy, and my maiden name is White Knight. My dad said, "Oh no, she'll be Windy White Knight. We can't name her Wendy." So I'll stop and see if there's any questions.
I actually have a question. Something you said about investing in workers. When Regis and I were speaking with Chris Marks from SUNY Ulster, we were talking about, he was telling us about this program that ended up for all women who wanted to, it was healthcare courses, specifically what they were, he didn't say, but as we know in the pandemic, a lot of women lost their jobs and are single moms, main breadwinner, and now are stuck home taking care of the kids. But a lot of women wanted to better themselves, to make more money, but then they couldn't do it because they couldn't go to school to better themselves, to get better jobs. And they offered a program, but what they got was support for these women to actually attend and take the classes, and then they could go after these better paying jobs. And we got talking about the concept of, the way it has always been done. The way I went to school, I paid for my college education, paid off my student loans, and then, out in the workforce. I was fortunate. I landed in the business that I actually went to school for. But I know students I teach at the College of St. Rose, they're paying more per year than what I ended up with as paying back after 4 years there. And that model is breaking right now because the costs of college are so high, and students end up with so much debt that they just take whatever job that pays them, that they can pay off those loans and they can live. So that concept of investment, I think, is really important, and certainly very intriguing, because asking the businesses to actually invest in the workforce, I think is a really great model to move forward with, because it's just necessary. If we don't support this system, and what it's not, anybody that's what you were saying at McDonald's, they're flipping hamburgers. They're doing that just to make money, but yet they're just there to make McDonald's rich.
Mhm.
That everybody is feeling that now. That's what their place is. It's not about bettering yourself and actually having a career and being better, and that nurturing and that support, whatever level it may come to. I was very impressed with that, what they've done over there at SUNY Ulster with those people. So I think that is a real fundamental part of this puzzle.
I have to agree with you. I think that you start with identifying career laddering opportunities. Healthcare is a very obvious one. You can entry into a healthcare career as a home health aide or a CNA, which is a relatively short time period for training. But once in, you can ladder up. You can go LPN, RN, you can go into ultrasonographer, you can go, there's a lot of different paths. There's a career ladder. I'm actually working with the Teamsters on creating a apprenticeship program for CDL and also for the distribution sector that has a career ladder in it that's obvious. Somebody goes into a distribution warehouse as a picker. How mind-numbing would that job be? It's but for those who don't want to stay there, the next step could be forklift driver. That in this model, the Teamsters are trying to create that you would be on the job being paid while you're also being trained. So you move up in pay and in skills, forklift. Then if you want to go further, you can go into and get your CDL license. You can drive a school bus or a city bus or a short-term the transportation back and forth delivery service. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Identifying those career ladders, I think, is important, and then providing the supports to help individuals who want to move into those jobs. And you're right, employers need to invest. Years ago, like my dad, and my grandfather, and companies invested in the workforce, from what I've heard stories of. We've gotten a little lazy in today's world because there seem to be a lot of workers available to fill all positions. Well, it's not true anymore. So we have to look at what can be done to support workers, to raise up those wages. Also, we have a couple of big issues, and it's transportation and childcare. So those two are huge roadblocks to people entering and staying in the workforce. Childcare can cost $2,000 a month for one infant. And if you have a pay scale of $20 an hour and your rent is $2,000, you can't afford to work and pay daycare. So what are the options? On-site daycares, cooperative daycares. WEI in other parts of the state has facilitated enrollment. We help working families that make too much to apply for county childcare help, but not enough to actually afford quality daycare. So we fill that gap, but we don't have that in our region yet. Hopefully someday the state will fund it so it can come into our region, because it's needed here, especially needed here with the high cost of living. So when you're looking at iPark 84, what I would love to see is a daycare center on site.
Wait, you mean 87 or 84?
Oh, 87.
Ours is
Yours.
87, so I just want to make sure we're talking about the right one.
Kingston iPark. Yeah, wouldn't it be great to have a daycare center on site?
Yeah.
And you could have training daycare workers. There's training involved in that too. There's even, I think there's even a registered apprentice program for daycare providers now in the state of New York. So there's a lot of opportunity.
And that's extra jobs you're adding.
Exactly. And you're helping people be able to work. I've seen some creative solutions to transportation issues by some employers. There's an employer in Orange County that what he does is he has a good worker that he trusts. They rent a van, and that employee drives that van to and from work and picks up and drops off workers that work in a certain geographical area. So the one driving the van goes on the clock earlier as he's driving everybody, and those workers who don't have transportation are getting brought directly to the employer. So that works. Out in Idaho, they have an Idaho National Engineering Laboratory in the middle of the Arco Desert. It's about an hour drive out to the desert. They used to, and they still do, they had buses that would pick up, and these were engineers, physicists, PhDs, scientists. They would be standing on the street corner at 6 in the morning, and the bus would drive by, pick everybody up, and drive them out to the site. So there's creative solutions that can be implemented for some of these issues. We just have to have the will to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, to your point about workforce development, actually, workforce support is part of workforce development. I think that was, I think that's the point you made with regard to transportation and to daycare. We were speaking with Sarah Williams from the Ulster County. She's
Sharon.
Pardon me?
Sharon Williams.
Sharon Williams, I beg your pardon. Sharon Williams, the Director of Workforce Development for the county. One of the things that she says, wouldn't it be great, if she says, we're at a point right now where this campus is not developed. So iPark 87 is still a thought. I mean, it's a thought, it's an investment, but it's still a thought because this has not yet been realized, that, that if employers were expected to, in a sense, contribute to workforce support, workforce development to the tune of a percentage of something. And we're just, and what if there was that kind of investment? Of course, if there were grants for this, that would be, all to the good. But to keep it going and have skin in the game, employers would be asked. This was her idea, so I'm not stealing, but I do like it a lot, to contribute to workforce support and workforce development in an ongoing way. So, yes, flexible schedules are very important. Different ways of approaching organizational culture, which is what we're really talking about. This is a change. It's becoming very practical to support your workforce in these kinds of ways, but that's an organizational culture change, I think, for a lot of people. But these ideas are really now on the front end rather than on the back end of people who are already there and already working. So it's a difference between IPARC 84 and now IPARC 87. We're at the beginning of it. What do you think about that, Mary Jane, as an expectation to set up a kind of a cooperative, and that expectation that the employers there would contribute to a workforce development enterprise?
I think that's a brilliant idea, and it actually is working in the unionized building trades. The contractors that hire the union workers, the journeymen, they have to contribute a certain portion of their salary into the union's training and education fund. So it's the same type of concept.
Okay.
And so it works. It's and I think if you're creating the iPark and you make it a condition of being able to operate your business there.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's
yes,
a very
it makes
unique
sense.
concept and one that would really draw support from a lot of quarters.
Regis, can I jump in on that? That's really interesting to me. And, I think because for the majority of the IPARC 87 campus, we have a private developer who may or may not decide that that's a levy that they want to put on their tenants. But I think what you just described, Mary Jane, is an interesting alternative, which is when, if we set up something that provides workforce to those employers, that then they contribute back to that program when they hire those employees. That's really interesting, because that's like, more direct, look, you get a benefit from this, therefore you have to pay to help support it concept, which, is a fascinating one. I'm loving listening to this, so I'll shut up now, but this is right up the kind of the lane that I think we've had some conversations, with you, Regis and Laura, and with others about like workforce development on the campus. What should that look like? And I'll just, my one comment is, I think not only is there an opportunity here for this to benefit our workforce, as in our residents, but I think it's a competitive advantage for the location too, to have something like this at it, because everyone knows that in the next at least several years, workforce is the major constraint. And so if iPark is trying to recruit tenants, not that we need to incentivize iPark, but to realize that we have an opportunity to make the campus even more vibrant by saying, look, we have a workforce development program that makes it an even more attractive location for employers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tim, how and Alona, I see your question there. I'm going to get to it. Tim, how amenable is Joe Cotter to these ideas? I mean, have you been having discussions with him on some, because we're looking to make a new model, really, of how to redevelop something or to develop something. Is he thinking along those lines?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have not had very deep conversations on this topic yet. We've had, really some preliminary conversations along the lines of, we want to make room on the campus for SUNY Ulster, for Ulster BOCES, for SUNY New Paltz, for Bard College, for, our county office of employment and training in the State Department of Labor. And Mary Jane, I just sent you an email, and I'd love to follow up offline and kind of talk more about how this might work and pick your brain on it. But we've had those conversations with National Resources, and they seem eager to explore that further. I think they see that as a good mix too. But I'm my prior comment, I think, is where I think we will lean next, which is that no one, any employer right now knows that one of their biggest challenges, especially if they're trying to expand, is going to be filling available positions. And so whether or not Joe has fully recognized that, I would suspect he has, because he's working on lots of other campuses that I'm sure are facing some of the same challenges. I trust that in the coming months and years, as we align and kind of get the site fully underway, this will be an area of common interest. And so I think it's worth laying the groundwork and figuring out how we as kind of the community would like to see that shape up. And I love the idea of providing, childcare and other workforce supports. I would say housing is the third thing I would add to your list of two others, Mary Jane, that, is a much bigger, longer term challenge that we can't just flip a switch and solve, but we have to figure it out, because that housing cost is another big factor that, prevents people from being able to enter into the workforce. If they can't afford that housing, they just go elsewhere.
Very true. I think it's exciting, Tim, to talk about what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alona, I see your message, your questions answered. So Wayne, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, Mary Jane, I was just wondering whether or not your organization gets involved at all in encouraging or supporting unionization.
Workforce Development Institute, we were originally, we were born out of the state AFL-CIO. So we were essentially the training arm of the AFL-CIO. We have since, we're totally independent now, but we're still aligned with the precepts of good wages, contracts, the rest. However, that's about the one thing I'm prohibited from doing, is helping and supporting and unionization of a workforce.
Mm-hmm.
My personal feelings are one thing. In work, I have to remain neutral.
I see.
So that's a constraint by New York State?
No, I don't know. Actually, that's a good question. It's whether it was something from our funding or whether it's something that in practice was developed over time, just to keep the waters unmuddied, might be more along the line. So I'm not sure where it originated, but that is, we do keep out of that realm. Though we are working right now, and I serve on the committee, that we have a cannabis workforce initiative that we're doing with Cornell ILR. And that's also one of the partners on the board is RWDSU, the retail workers, and they have organized some of the medical dispensaries so far in the cannabis sector. So as you all know, I mean, the 50,000 jobs are anticipated through all of the different parts of that adult use. So from a workforce development side, it's very interesting to see. And they have a project labor agreement, project peace agreement, I'm sorry, which means that the employers in cannabis will not do anything to prevent their workforce from unionizing, and the workforce agrees not to strike. So they have a labor peace agreement for that. Did I answer your question?
Does anybody have a question? Tim, do you
Laura,
have any?
I just wanted to say, I just got a text back from Beth, and she apologized. She got confused and maybe didn't have the right link or something, but she would love to talk with the group at some point. So maybe next time we can see if she can join. And I think, just for reference to tie it in, Stockade Works is a not-for-profit workforce development organization that works on building a workforce for the film and television sector. And Mary Jane, I suspect you've interacted with them. I don't know if you guys have funded any projects of theirs, but yeah, it's an exciting opportunity that feels kind of plug and play to what is likely to be at least one of the uses on the Tech City campus in the future. And I think, to their credit, Stockade Works has kind of set up a program and model to try to provide workforce development opportunities for an industry. You know, as you were kind of talking about cannabis there, this is similar in the sense that an industry that's growing rapidly in our region, and that presents a huge opportunity for local residents to kind of get trained up with the skills that allow them to fit into that sector in various ways. And so I think it would be great to have Beth share kind of what they're doing. I think it's right along the lines of what we're talking about here.
They're doing some great things with their boot camp and linking the boot camp into a production. So, and then they function as they keep their graduates and put them out to work when the opportunities come up for different projects. So I think that's great. They're doing great work.
Maybe Mary Jane can offer some advice on something that I've seen as a problem for quite a while. You know, the union for the filmmakers and all of that, they're the technical people. They have to bring them from New York to work up here. And this area has a lot of camera people, audio engineers, all kinds of folks that live up here and travel away to work because they can't get hired up here. And I think what we need is the regions rezoned so that we can have our own union up here and employ, and if we build more studio, if what Stockade Works wants to see happen actually happens at iPark 87, we're off, there's more opportunities. But if we're not employing the people up here, it's not helping us up here. But the union stops that.
Oh, I was under the impression, but I've worked with the union up here, and my mind went blank on what the call letters are for that union. But I don't know why I can't remember it.
Yeah, and I'm spacing. I'm the AFM is the one for musicians, but it's not that one.
They have gotten they're very involved, like the Civic Auditorium. They do work there. So there are, but I'm sure there's more room for employment. But yes, I agree.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue that should be resolved, because we can do everything for movies and TV up here, from casting to writing, getting music, getting it recorded, doing the filming, having the space. We can do it all up here and need not employ anybody from outside the area.
Yeah, that's all their internal negotiations that they do, I would imagine. I think Karen had a question.
She did.
I saw her hand up.
No, I wasn't a question. I mean, you probably all know this because you're talking about, having Bard and SUNY and at the facility, but just knowing that Bard, that's what Bard does at its college, is its daycare, is its training center for their teachers. But you know that, right?
Yeah, my wife happens to run a daycare, and so I have a window into that world. And yeah, I think it would be really interesting to see, this was something that our planning director, Dennis Doyle, raised several months ago, that I think we're looking into whether there's some funding that might be available to establish a daycare center somewhere on the campus, something like that. But the thought of doing it as an educational training center as well is an interesting additional layer to it.
Yeah. Anyone else have questions?
Susan.
I thought, yeah, Susan had.
Oh, Susan, I'm sorry. I didn't see it in your bookcase there.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. Well, I'm with Citizens for Local Powers of my organization, and we are doing a pre-apprenticeship program in green building. And I could see some really interesting connections there, because I suspect there's going to be some building going on at Tech City. Right. And there may be a way, we're working with SUNY Ulster and have connections at BARD as well. And I could see a really interesting cooperation there as we expand.
Yeah, I can see the same, Susan. That would make a ton of sense. I think the developer has mentioned at various points wanting to do some sort of housing on the site. And I think at one of the recent presentations, maybe it was at the press conference, he talked about sustainability as kind of a concept that they were working on in terms of their housing. And so it would seem to me that there would be an interesting opportunity there, let alone all the retrofits and new construction of commercial industrial space that'll probably happen over the next decade.
Right. Well, I think both business and residential, you know, and then certainly including, you know, bringing older buildings up to par. It makes it a lot cheaper to run them, among other things, right? Not only is it better for the climate and for people's health, but it makes sense economically. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I feel like we're overdue to catch up, Susan. So we should talk about this as maybe a next training program that we might work together on, especially, you know, if we can find a way to have, you know, some group of students working with whoever's doing the construction work on the site to get exposure experience. Maybe there's a kind of, yeah, maybe there's other ways to accomplish that too.
I'll give you a call soon. That sounds great.
I'm seeing, is this Alona? Talking about your question about position on tax breaks and pilots. I think that goes to what I was talking about in investing in workers. It seems like, at least we feel like here in Ulster County, that businesses come here and try to pay as little and invest as little as they can in the community and get as much out as they can. And we're fighting pilots and looking, hopefully, I know there's some of us that would love to see the IDA revamped and to make it more, you know, they're breaking our backs. You know, taxes go up because of all that is given away to these businesses, and then they don't last, that we don't get anything back for that investment. So I'm going on, I'm sorry, it's a hot button issue, I guess, for me. But do you have, the question is, do you have any thoughts on pilots and tax breaks as it is to this workforce development?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Well, I am going to try and moderate my words because I feel kind of like you do, Laura, overall.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that business attraction is important. And in the world, it's sweetening the pot is how it gets done. But I do think that if we're going to invest, as I said earlier, in tax breaks and things for companies, they need to be bringing living wage jobs. Mm-hmm. And I've seen too many manufacturers come in and have a minimum wage is what they are paying. Mm-hmm. And that's just not right. And also we need clawbacks. If they don't meet the measures that the funding was contingent upon, mm-hmm. you have to have a vehicle for clawbacks. They mm-hmm. shouldn't just be able to say, oh, sorry. You know? So I could go on and on about that issue, but I think I'll stop right there.
It's become another one of those trickle down things that are just squeezing the middle class out, and it has to be looked at and revamped. And I could go on and on about it also, and I see Vicky's hand, so I'll let her ask her question.
Hi, I've been listening from afar, and you're talking about, you know, the pilots, and yes, and I agree with Mary Jane that you do have to sweeten the pot and you do have to have callbacks, but we were just talking about some great ideas about workforce, and maybe part of the requirement to get those pilots is to invest in the workforce support and development for any business that goes in there. So that should be another requirement in order to get those pilots. And then you could also, the callbacks could be related to that also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's one way that you can make the IDA criteria a little bit different for this development for Tech City.
Makes sense.
Tim is shaking his head, yes.
Yeah, I love that thought. And I know, for what it's worth, there's been some discussion, I think maybe going back to earlier points, that anyone who doesn't realize that workforce is the challenge of the decade is asleep or hiding under a rock. So I think it would make a lot of sense to shift and orient many of our economic development tools around ways for our employers to support their workers in ways of paying fair wages, providing benefits, making sure that there's access to those positions through training and transportation and all the other challenges, and to, where necessary, incentivize them to do that. That feels like an interesting kind of tweak alternative to the way that we've thought about those incentives in the past.
I think it's important too to give the employers a voice in discussions about the skill gaps and what they need to be successful, and a workforce development is responsive to those needs. A lot of times you have to take a look at it sector by sector, so that you can make it feasible to put together a class to address those needs. But it's an important part, and where employers come together and they're invested in and listen to regarding workforce development, I think it makes it a little bit easier pill to swallow when they have to pay for workforce development.
Yeah, and you think about it, Alona, I read your article recently about who these pilots hurt and who do they hurt the most? It's the school districts. So right there, if we stopped that, we would be better educating our young folks and we can make them more prepared to enter the workforce. Again, it's that thought of investment and putting something into the community. Tim?
Let me throw a monkey wrench in this conversation, which is one that honestly I wrestle with, which when the public sector, government of any kind, invests in economic development, if we just think of it simply, oversimplify it, we could invest public money on building a corporate park or a corporate facility. That's a physical improvement to a property. That doesn't move. And then we can invest in workforce development, and we can pay for high quality K through 12 education or childcare, and we can pay for training programs and college curriculum. But the benefits go to individuals who can move. And so there's a challenge that's present in a lot of economic development work in kind of the local setting that just responds to the political reality of that situation, which is that when we invest in people, people can leave, and then is that investment worthwhile? And it's hard to justify that investment. And this is especially true, as we all probably know, in the K through 12 system, where most of our high school graduates leave the area, and so that investment, that tremendous investment in their education, doesn't necessarily benefit our local workforce or our employment base or our communities for that matter. And so there's a real kind of philosophical challenge there that I think I feel like we grapple with at the county level, how to justify those investments in people, which are clearly the thing we need, but then with the risk that those people, will move on and leave our community for other opportunities elsewhere.
But if we're providing them with better jobs, they would have reason to stay here.
So that's I think where I end up with it too, Laura, is like, you can't finish the statement with investing in the education workforce. You have to make sure that that's tied to the jobs that are available here and the kind of jobs that we want to see here in the future, and do the effort. I think Susan, was talking about some of the green careers work that we've done with her and that they've done it at Citizens for Local Power. And that to me is like one of these burgeoning sectors that, like, we have this opportunity to do it right this time, which is to invest in the education and workforce development to create an advantage that then grows that sector here so that those people can stay here. That feels like maybe a little too theoretical, but it's, I think, the way we have to kind of look at this. It's not short-term investments, because those can walk away. It's long-term investments in the competitiveness of our place for those future opportunities.
And housing too.
Yeah.
And you're also helping those businesses to survive and prosper.
Vicki?
Well, yeah, let me just try to respond to Tim. if you have a workforce development, and you have some of the colleges and everything involved in workforce development, you can also start to get the high schools involved in that too, so that you're steering some of these students to those programs. So that means a little bit of a change in curriculum in some of the schools, and that they would buy into that because they would get students that would be interested in it. For instance, the film industry, we have that. We have a strength in film industry, where kids could start in high school, could start learning some of the stuff that goes into film, and getting them interested in it. And then they can see a path from high school to college to the workforce development that we're developing.
Vicki, to your point, last school year, I did what we called it career Zooms with Wappinger Falls high schools. And what we did was we focused on healthcare for the first year. And every month at the same hour, we had different individuals that are currently working in healthcare, everything from a certificate level all the way up to a neurologist from Memorial Sloan Kettering. They came and they told about their job. Data was provided about the education requirements and the pay and local employers and the future need. And the students were able to ask in real time, just like this, it was a Zoom, questions of that person about their career, their education, from some of the medical doctors, how much they had to give up through their 20s to pursue medicine. It was great. And what I really liked seeing was every month we had a good turnout of high school students. Then they recorded them and they were put on the high school's YouTube channel. So parents and students could watch them over and over again or after hours. So there were multiple views, hundreds of views of those videos outside of the regular school day that we did once a month. So from what I understand, they're expanding that now into other sectors to show our high school students that there are good careers locally and give them the information. I did a project with Poughkeepsie High School. The students, now Poughkeepsie's got over a 55% dropout rate, but I'm a firm believer that teenagers, given the opportunity, they surprise you and they excel. So I had a coloring book idea for in-demand occupations that the high school students, they had to research the careers and then they drew the pictures. They drew the coloring book and created it. We printed 20,000 copies and gave them out for free. And we still get requests for that because so on each page of that career depicted, there was all the information that the students had to find out about education and pay and need and all those things. So it was, I really do think with teenagers, you build it, they will come, and provide those opportunities. And by employing a lot of these different strategies, we can keep our young people in the region for some of the good jobs that will be here.
Yeah, that's
educate the parents too, that college is a great path and some of my kids have gone and some haven't, but it's not the only path to a good paying career.
Tim, you were saying something?
No, just agreeing with that last statement. I think it's a kind of societal set of values that we have to start getting past, that it isn't necessary in a lot of cases. It's actually detrimental with the costs that you were describing, Laura. To go to a four-year college without a clear sense of direction on where that's heading for you, is a risk that maybe all of us or many of us took at some point in our lives. But it's different now. The calculus is different now, and I think it's time to start opening up the possibility of other options that don't entail that much debt at the beginning of your career, with a kind of question mark over where that career will go.
Right, and I think. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Vicki.
And just to build on that, when you have students that are interested in the workforce development here at home, they realize that they don't have to incur so much debt because they actually stay where their support system is. You know, so that helps. So that's another thing that can be, you know, looked at and pointed out to students. You don't have to incur so much debt, you know, when you take this path, you know, that could be provided that you might be interested in.
One, I was on a roundtable discussion with students from various colleges in the community. It was held a few years ago at FDR's library. And one of the things that came out, and it wasn't just Marist College. Students from multiple colleges were saying the same thing, that they were not getting local internship opportunities. They are in recruitment from companies, local companies. They were getting more out-of-state recruitment letters than they were from local companies, which I found that was very interesting, especially with so many very good universities we've got in this region.
That's a thing I feel like I've heard a number of times about each of the colleges in our region. And I think there's a huge opportunity, untapped opportunity there that, you know, I know a lot of college towns elsewhere in the country have made a big push to try to recognize the tremendous asset that the graduates from those institutions are. And, you know, we basically don't even try to keep them here. And I think the interesting, you know, I'm one of them. I mean, I went to SUNY New Paltz. I'm here because I went to SUNY New Paltz. But and I think there's a number of folks that just naturally make that decision to stay when they graduate. But imagine what we could do if we made a concerted effort to find pathways for those students, make sure that they're feeling like this is an opportunity for them to stay in the place where they went to school or grew up and went to school.
Someone just put in the chat something about you need math and different things for the building trades, and that's very true. The building trades are not a catch-all for people that can't perform. It's highly competitive. It does take math skills. They are tested to get in. I mean, it's a real career, and many of them you do earn college credit while you're an apprentice also. My husband, National Honor Society in high school, hated school. He went into the carpenter apprenticeship program. I'm very happy that he did because I like that retirement and pension that's coming. But yeah, so whoever put that, it's not up in front of me, but that's very true. Did you want to speak to that?
I'd just like to interject something on this conversation about school debt. I agree that not everybody needs to go to a four-year college, and it's crippling for students to try to get on their feet with that kind of debt. But as a societal goal, as what would be really healthy, and like a lot of other countries have, would be for American students to be able to go to college without crippling debt.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even though we have to acknowledge that's the reality, that's really not the direction we should be going. I mean, it's a dysfunctional situation. So people shouldn't have to forego college and the opportunities and the benefits it would incur just because it's going to break them. We really should be working toward a system in which anybody who wants to can afford to go to college for whatever reason, if it's to advance their career or if it's just because they want to expand their horizons. And so,
you know, the county just orchestrated, I can't remember her name, but a young woman just got a full ride to SUNY Ulster because she got vaccinated and won a lottery, right? That's how it happened to him. And that's, you know, that's the kind of thing. If we're offering education and it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't matter what you're educated for. It could be for blue collar. It could be for, you know, for arts, you know, whatever it may be. But if we have the jobs here, again, supporting the education to train these folks to do these jobs. And you don't necessarily have to go to an expensive four-year school, but getting someone started off for free at SUNY Ulster, that's a tremendous opportunity. really tremendous. I hope we see more of that somehow. And again, it's
I think
going back to what I mentioned about Chris, this program that they had, that they educated, providing these women because they needed support in order to advance themselves. And he was able to find the grant to support them to go to school and to do just that for them. That's it.
So
But I think it's
don't know.
also,
Wait,
think
let
it's also-
Alona, because this is kind of about her comments, so
Sure.
then we'll come back to you, Susan. Go ahead, Alona.
Oh, no, that's okay. If I start, what I think is that you should be working with the state to give free education to a lot of people up to a certain level in return for some kind of service, and the credits get withheld if they don't provide that service. I don't see why, Tim, you can't come up with a program like that. So I don't know what your timeline is, but they're really, if it's short term or long term, but there are some serious we have some serious long term problems facing us. You may know now that women are in college 2 to 1 for men, which is a real problem going forward on a societal level. Our fertility rate, as I wrote there, has dropped to 1.6%, which means that we're going to be having big problems, 20 years down the road. And I think that I also think that the kind of companies that we attract is going to really make the difference. If we have Amazon, if we have a lot of these companies, it's going to be the same old. And that's why I put in there, I'm sorry, I'm very active with my fingers because if I start talking, sometimes it's too much. But I think we should be creating the companies and creating the businesses. Susan, you were talking about creating some sort of business, because if we just wind up with another Frito-Lay or another multinational, really, do we really want a Frito-Lay that's going to produce a product at low wages that's going to make people sick so that we're going to have more Medicaid costs down the road so that we can hire more CNAs? The whole thing is crazy. So, and Tim, you were talking about the problem of why invest in individuals when they're going to leave. Well, I would rather say, why invest in corporations by giving them huge tax breaks when they can leave? That's the problem. It's not investing in individuals that it's the problem. It's investing in these soulless multinational corporations that come here and take our tax dollars and rape us. Okay, you better see, I'm going to shut up now. Bye.
Yeah, Alona, I appreciate that, because I just want to be clear that I believe that it's better to invest in our people. I think it's just this challenge of when you invest in people who are mobile, it defies the kind of rules of what are considered good investments in some people's minds. So I think this is just a kind of perception challenge that we need to get over, that we need to recognize that we need to make those investments. But I think as we continued that conversation, the key is then making sure that those investments in people allow them to continue to live here, work here, so that investment
that's simple. That's simple. Don't let them have the credits until they
right.
do.
No, I like that concept.
That's
I think this is all, I appreciate all of the thinking. There's a lot of different ideas bouncing around here about this challenge. And then, it's obviously going to take a concerted effort on the part of many people to change a system that, quite frankly, hasn't been working very well. And I think just more acutely in the pandemic, it's revealed to us that, that the workplace is no longer the place people want to be. And we've built a workplace that isn't necessarily serving the people that it was meant to serve. So, yeah,
and with the declining population, well, at least not growing as fast population, and with immigration being barred, workers are going to have an even more of a power. So I don't see, and like I said, I know a lot of kids, they've lost 2 years of school. So you could have college kids teaching little kids, tutoring little kids after school, and they have to do that. I can think of a million different ways right now where you could get people to stay and serve the community.
Yeah.
And Susan, you wanted to say something.
well, just taking it back to the trades for a minute. I totally think everyone should be able to afford to go to college. It should be free, frankly, if it could be, but or affordable at least. But I also think it's important to see that the trades are increasingly technical and require, as Ilona said, a lot of background knowledge. So we make that, simplistic distinction a lot of times in a way that's unfair to both.
Tim, we were talking a few hours ago about uniform tax exempt policy. And one of the things that could go into a kind of a tailored UTEP would be workforce investment and support. So if there's going to be public support for a good enterprise, let's say on this campus, one of them would be what are you going to do to invest in the support and the development of the workforce? And retention is a big item. We've talked about retention from keeping high school kids, in the area, or college kids, here, keeping the workforce present at work, because retention at in any employment is the answer to recruitment. Gallup.com recently published a study, and one of the things they found very effective was the upskilling efforts of employers that had real effects. So it's something you said, Mary Jane, about earn while you learn, or learn while you earn, and so if a person is willing to, so really this is a worker investment program. If you are willing, we will pay you, and if you achieve this, we'll pay you more. And so what kind of career ladder, or even a career lattice of some sort, are you willing, Mr. and Mrs. Employer, willing to set up to encourage that? Because we know, and we know through study, that this actually works, and it really stems from personal professional motivation and not from external employer motivation. So, I think these various upskilling type programs are going to be very good for employees and the workforce and the economy.
We're getting close to 8:30 here. So does anybody have any more questions? I'd like to kind of wind this up, and maybe Tim, you could give us a quick update on where we are with the transfer, because there were some things that have happened in the past few weeks with an assessment happening, and does anybody have any more questions for Mary Jane? Okay, Mary Jane, thank you so much for starting this discussion. I think this is not the last one we're going to have. It's an incredibly interesting topic, and you just keep digging deeper and deeper into it, and it's just, to me, very fascinating. And I hope that the one thing I think we've gotten from this conversation is that we all want to see a new way of doing things over at iPark 87. That we do not want it to be what iPark 84 is, quite frankly. Not to disrespect that at all, but we want to see some difference in how that's developed. So we'll keep pushing. That's what we're here for, to keep pushing on that. Mary Jane, did you want to say something? You're muted.
There was just a question about how much money does WUI have for Ulster County? Each project is evaluated on its own merit. So if you have an idea, I put my email address in the chat, and let's talk, and we can explore that. I'd be happy to. I do not have our funding is not allocated per county or per region. It's statewide. Our applications for grants are evaluated statewide. So thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to chatter at you all today. I've enjoyed this conversation. A great group, and with a lot of great ideas. So I appreciate. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
no, thank you for your
Great
time
discussion.
and really appreciate all you had to say, and we'll be back to you. So Tim,
Yeah, thank you, Mary Jane. And yeah, Laura, I'll give the quick 15-second overview of where we stand. Still a couple pieces in the transaction left to finish. We are working on an appraisal right now. Appraisers have been over to do site inspections, have been gathering all the necessary documents to complete their appraisal of the east side of the former IBM campus. That should be done within the next couple of weeks. And in the meantime, almost all of the legal paperwork has been finalized. Right now, we're just waiting on signatures on one final agreement, which is called a license agreement. In the interim, until the appraisal is done and the full transfer of all the deeds occurs over to iPark 87, the license agreement is what allows them to operate the site, to be on premises, to manage the tenants that are currently there, and potentially to bring in new tenants if they're in alignment with the environmental constraints on the site. So that final piece, probably in the next week, I would say we'll have that license agreement in place, and then that'll hold us over until the final transfer of the deeds takes place sometime in the next month or 2 or 3.
wow, so he's just taking over. He's just taking over.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's the idea. In the meantime, in the interim, until the environmental cleanup work can be completed and any renovations or new construction get approved at the town level, he'll basically take on maintenance of the existing buildings and the tenants that are there. Not many are left, but there are a handful of tenants still there. And we'll take on the obligations for maintaining the property, paying for electric and utility bills, all of that kind of work. And I would say, in some conversations, I feel like it's pretty clear that anybody who owns a property like that, their first motivation is to start generating rent so that they have actual revenue to pay all the bills that come. And so I would suspect that, as he mentioned in the initial press conference, he had an interest from Ronnie Brook Farms that I think they're still working to finalize a lease, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hear in the next several weeks some other potential near-term tenants, ones that would be compatible with the existing constraints on the site. And as well, I know that National Resources has had several good conversations with US EPA to determine the right legal documents that will have to be put in place for them, National Resources, iPark 87, to take over the cleanup that currently Allen Ginsberg is the responsible party for. So there's some work there with EPA to get all the paperwork in place.
And Alona's asking the question, what control will you or we or anyone have over leases he puts in the place?
The normal,
he would be owning it, right? So
he, as a property owner, it'll be the normal constraints that include planning board review and approval, and the indications and the clearest, quickest path for him is to do work that's consistent with the 2009 master plan and in generic environmental impact statement that are in place for the site. Anything outside of that, he'll have to get planning board approval to do. But because this was basically a private party transaction enabled by the county, which was in a foreclosure process, it's an ownership by National Resources, iPark 87, at the end of the day. And so they'll basically have sole determination over what happens with the site, consistent with all the planning approvals. And there's still the environmental easements for the cleanup work that IBM is still responsible for, all that stuff. So there's some guide rails, but generally speaking, on the east side, more so on the west side, we will have constraints on him over what kinds of uses. And that's a process that we're in right now to talk about. Really, quite frankly, this conversation gives me some material to bring back to our team and then to think about how we would approach National Resources in discussions on the west side of the campus about incorporating some of these workforce development concepts on that west side.
Mm-hmm. And it would be the town of Ulster, Alona. It's our planning board and all of that. So.
Okay.
Yeah, with review by the county. So there is that other role too.
Yes. Yeah. So any other questions? We're at 8:29. I'm determined we're not going a minute over.
Well managed.
But thank you all. This has been a really great discussion, and And I thank you all for joining us, and especially Mary Jane for being our guest. We hope you'll come back again. As we keep learning about this, I'm sure we're going to have more questions for you. And I'm hoping that, we can establish a relationship that's deeper, that we bring you up here at Ulster County somehow. So, and Tim, always, thank you for being here and being a part of the conversation, and for, allowing us to have a say, in what goes on there. We're, really proud of this relationship, and how we're all trying to work together. To me, that is another new model that I hope we can be a first of many things to come with that kind of thing. So Town of Ulster Citizens has always said that, whatever happens over there, the citizens have to be involved and have to be a part of what happens. It's just really important. So thank you.
Thank you,
All
Laura.
right,
Thank
then.
you, Regis. Thanks, everyone.
Night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Have a great night. And I'll be posting this online on Facebook, and we do have our YouTube channel. You can see the history of these. I don't have them all up yet, but I'm working on it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Night.
Thank you. Great job, Mary Jane.